I lost everything on a Tuesday morning. Not in some dramatic market crash or algorithmic meltdown, just a slow, grinding bleed that took 3 years, $47,000, and every shred of confidence I thought I had. The worst part wasn't the empty account. It was sitting in my car outside the brokerage office, unable to explain to my wife why our daughter's college fund had evaporated into thin air. That moment, that specific, soul-crushing moment, is where my real trading education began. Not in the books I'd read or the courses I'd bought, but in the wreckage of who I thought I was. Most people think trading transformation is about finding the right strategy. They believe somewhere out there exists a perfect indicator combination, a secret pattern, a magic formula that separates winners from losers. I believed that too. I spent years searching for it, convinced that my next discovery would be the breakthrough. But standing in that parking lot, watching my reflection in the rearview mirror, I realized I'd been asking the wrong question entirely. The question wasn't what strategy works, it was why I kept destroying every strategy I touched. The enemy wasn't the market. It was me, and until I faced that truth, no amount of technical analysis would save me. The journey from broke to profitable wasn't about learning new tactics. It was about unlearning everything my ego desperately wanted to believe. It was about confronting the parts of myself I'd been avoiding since childhood, the need to be right, the fear of being ordinary, the addiction to validation through risk. Every losing trade wasn't just a market lesson. It was a mirror showing me exactly who I was when pressure revealed my true character. And what I saw terrified me, because the person staring back wasn't a struggling trader who needed better tools. He was a broken human being using trading as medication for wounds that had nothing to do with markets. Before that Tuesday, I was convinced I understood trading. I had read everything, Market Wizards, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, every trading psychology book on Amazon. I could explain market structure, support and resistance, volume analysis, candlestick patterns. I had opinions about Federal Reserve policy and earnings reports. I felt intelligent when I discussed implied volatility and Fibonacci retracements. But none of that intellectual knowledge translated into consistent profits. My account told a different story than my ego wanted to admit. And the gap between what I knew and what I could execute was destroying me financially and emotionally. The first year of trading felt like success waiting to happen. I was working construction, waking up at 4 in the morning to study charts before heading to job sites. Every spare moment was dedicated to learning. I paper traded for 3 months, convinced I was building the foundation properly. My demo account flourished, up 32% in 90 days. I felt ready. I felt chosen. This was going to be my escape from physical labor, from worrying about money, from the limitations of a regular paycheck. The market was going to recognize my dedication and reward my discipline. Looking back, that belief that the market cared about my effort was the first crack in the foundation I thought I was building. I started with $5,000. Money I'd saved from overtime shifts and birthday gifts. Money that felt significant but not life-altering. Within 2 weeks, I was up $800. I remember the exact feeling, like I'd discovered a secret door that most people never find. Every winning trade confirmed my intelligence, validated my sacrifice, proved I was different from the masses who fail at trading. I started telling people I was a trader, not trying to trade, or learning to trade. I was a trader. My identity shifted before my skills had developed. And that identity, that premature certainty about who I was, would cost me everything. The losses started gradually. A small stop, out here, a break-even exit there, a winner that I held too long and turned into a loser. Nothing dramatic. But slowly, my account started shrinking. 5,000 became 40, 200, then 3,800, then 30, 500. I told myself this was normal. Every trader has drawdowns. The key was staying in the game long enough for my edge to emerge, so I deposited another 2,000. That lasted 6 weeks before I needed another deposit. Then another. Each deposit came with a story. This time I've learned the lesson. This time I understand what I was doing wrong. This time will be different. But nothing changed. Only my bank account and my marriage both grew thinner. My wife, Sarah, never said the words that would have ended it all. She never screamed or threatened to leave. Instead, she got quiet. That horrible, patient quiet of someone watching someone they loved destroy themselves. When I'd talk about my latest strategy modification or the trade that would have worked if I'd held just 5 more minutes, she'd nod and change the subject. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing month. She was watching me drown and didn't know how to save me. Because I kept insisting I was swimming. I kept describing my flailing as a strategy. The breaking point came after what I now call the perfect trade. I'd spent 2 weeks analyzing a stock, a biotech company with a drug awaiting FDA approval. The technical setup was flawless. Support tested 3 times and held. Volume building. Risk-reward ratio of 1 to 5. I'd done the fundamental research, studied the analyst reports, mapped every scenario. This wasn't gambling. This was calculated, intelligent investing. I allocated $3,000, way more than my usual position size, because the edge seemed so obvious. The announcement came after hours. FDA approval. The stock gapped up 18% in pre-market. By my calculations, I was about to make $5,000. I barely slept that night, refreshing my account, watching the pre-market numbers climb, market open. The stock touched the high for exactly 12 seconds, then started dropping. Not slowly, violently. Within 20 minutes, it had given back the entire gap and was trading below my entry. My carefully calculated position was underwater. But this made no sense. The news was good. The fundamentals were solid. This had to be temporary panic, stop, loss cascades, algorithms creating artificial pressure. So I held. I held through lunchtime as it dropped another 7%. I held through the afternoon as it bled another 4%. By close, my $3,000 position was worth $1,900. Down 37% in a single day. On good news. On the trade I'd done everything right. That night, I couldn't eat. Sarah made dinner, and I sat at the table moving food around my plate while explaining why holding was the right decision. The company was solid. The approval was real. The market was wrong. By Monday, the irrational selling would reverse, and I'd exit with a profit. Maybe not the 5,000 I'd expected, but at least break even. I just needed to be patient. Sarah listened, and when I finished, she asked one question that shattered everything. "Do you hear yourself?" That was it. 4 words, but in her tone was 3 years of watching me explain away reality, rationalize losses, construct narratives where my judgment was always sound, and the market was always temporary wrong. 4 words that forced me to actually listen to the stories I'd been telling. Monday morning, the stock opened down another 11%. Some analyst downgrade citing concerns I'd never researched. My position was now worth $1,200. I'd lost $1,800 on a trade where I'd done everything right. I closed it. The loss hit my account like a physical blow. But worse than the money was what the loss revealed about me. I hadn't held because of analysis or conviction. I'd held because admitting I was wrong felt like admitting I was a failure. The market wasn't wrong. My ego was bankrupt. And it had just cost me $1,800 in tuition for that lesson. I stopped trading for 2 weeks. Not because I decided to, I simply couldn't bring myself to open my platform. Every time I tried, my chest would tighten and my breathing would get shallow. I'd close the app and distract myself with work, with television, with anything that didn't require facing what I'd become. During those 2 weeks, Sarah and I barely spoke about trading. But the silence was different now. Not patient watching, more like holding space for a death in the family. The person I'd been trying to be was dying, and we both knew it. What I didn't know yet was that this death was necessary. You can't become someone new while defending who you've been. The moment that changed everything happened on an ordinary Saturday morning. I was driving to the hardware store, listening to a podcast about trauma recovery, not trading related, just something Sarah had recommended. The psychologist being interviewed said something that made me pull over. People don't heal from the trauma itself. They heal from their resistance to accepting that the trauma happened. She was talking about abuse survivors, But the words hit me like a diagnosis I'd been avoiding. I'd been resisting reality for 3 years. Every loss, I'd fought against the market's verdict. Every mistake, I'd reframed as bad timing or external manipulation. I'd never actually accepted that I was failing because of my own choices, my own emotions, my own unexamined wounds. Sitting in that hardware store parking lot, I started crying. Not sad crying, releasing crying. Like my body had been holding something toxic and finally got permission to let it go. I cried for the money I'd lost. For the man I'd promised Sarah I'd become. For my daughter's college fund that I'd gambled away, while calling it investing. For the 3 years I'd wasted protecting an identity that was never going to work. But, mostly, I cried because I finally understood. I wasn't a bad trader learning to be good. I was a hurt person using trading to avoid dealing with being hurt. And until I addressed that truth, no strategy on earth would save me. I didn't return to trading immediately. Instead, I did something that felt ridiculous and necessary. I started therapy. Not trading psychology coaching or performance optimization. Actual therapy with a woman named Dr. Martinez who knew nothing about markets and didn't care. Our first session, she asked why I was there. I started explaining my trading struggles, my account drawdowns, my pattern of self-sabotage. She let me talk for 15 minutes, then interrupted. But why are you really here? I didn't understand the question. She tried again. What are you actually trying to fix with trading? I told her I wanted to be profitable, to build wealth, to prove I could succeed at something difficult. She nodded and asked one more question. Who are you trying to prove that to? That question destroyed me. Because the answer wasn't, myself, or, my wife, or even, my father. The answer was a much younger version of me. A kid who grew up watching his parents fight about money, who wore hand-me-down clothes to school, who learned that financial success was the only success that mattered. That kid was still running my trading. Every position I took was him trying to prove we weren't poor anymore. We weren't powerless anymore. We weren't the family that couldn't afford things. And every loss confirmed his deepest fear, that we were exactly who we'd always been, just pretending otherwise. Trading wasn't about making money. It was about proving I'd escaped. And you can't think clearly when you're running from your past. Dr. Martinez helped me understand something crucial about the psychology of trading. The market doesn't care about your story, but your story completely controls how you see the market. My story was scarcity, never enough, always precarious, safety is an illusion. So I traded like someone whose house was on fire. I couldn't wait for perfect setups because waiting felt like accepting poverty. I couldn't take small losses because every loss confirmed I was back where I started. I couldn't follow a plan because plans were for people who had time, and I felt like I was running out of time to prove I wasn't a failure. The market was just being the market, but I was seeing every movement through the lens of my childhood fear, and that lens was distorting everything. For 3 months, I didn't trade at all. I just worked on understanding myself. Dr. Martinez had me write about money memories, not trading memories, childhood memories. The first expensive thing I bought with my own money. The moment I realized my family had less than others. The fights my parents had that scared me most. Writing those memories, I started seeing patterns. Every time I'd blown up my account, it was after a period of small, consistent gains, the exact moment I should have been confident. But instead of confidence, I'd feel panic, like the universe was about to notice I was doing well and take it away. So I'd sabotage it first. Better to control the destruction than have it surprise you. That belief had been running in the background of every trade I'd ever made. When I finally returned to trading, I didn't start with technical analysis or strategy development. I started with emotional inventory. Before each trading session, I'd write 3 things: how I felt physically, what I was afraid of that day, and what I was trying to prove. The first few weeks were shocking. Almost every entry was some version of trying to prove I'm not failing, or afraid of being ordinary, or need to feel in control of something. My trading had nothing to do with edge or probability. It was all about managing my internal state through external risk. I was using the market as a therapist, which is the most expensive therapy on earth. I went back to demo trading. Not to test a strategy, to test my ability to follow rules when nothing was at stake. If I couldn't follow my plan with fake money, how could I possibly follow it with real money? This felt humiliating. After 3 years of live trading, after losing tens of thousands, I was back to beginner exercises. But humiliation was what I needed. Pride had been killing my account. Maybe humility could save it. So I committed to 3 months of demo trading with one simple metric: execution quality. Not profit. Not win rate. Just did I follow my rules, or didn't I? The first month of demo trading revealed something terrifying. I couldn't follow my own rules for more than 3 trades in a row. I'd start each week with clear criteria: only trade these setups, honor every stop, take profit at target. By Wednesday, I'd be taking marginal setups because I was bored. By Friday, I'd have moved a stop because this one's different. I wasn't lacking knowledge. I was lacking the ability to do what I knew was right when my emotions suggested something easier. This wasn't a trading problem. This was a self-control problem. And self-control, I was learning, isn't about willpower. It's about understanding what you're actually feeling and why you're about to sabotage yourself because of it. Dr. Martinez introduced me to a concept she called the urge pause. When I felt the urge to take a trade that didn't meet my criteria or move a stop or revenge trade after a loss, instead of acting on the urge, I was supposed to pause and identify what I was actually feeling. Not what I thought, what I felt. This practice changed everything, because most of my trading decisions weren't decisions at all. They were emotional reactions disguised as analysis. That urgency to jet in before it moves. That was fear of missing out, which was really fear of being left behind, which connected to childhood feelings of being excluded. That need to make back a loss immediately, that was shame avoidance. Trying to erase evidence that I'd been wrong. Every destructive pattern traced back to an emotional wound, pretending to be a trading insight. One afternoon during month 2 of demo trading, I caught myself about to market buy a stock that had already moved 8%. My rules said wait for pullback. But it was running, and I could feel that familiar chest tightness of missing out. Instead of clicking buy, I pushed my chair back and did the urge pause. What was I feeling? Panic. Panic about what? About being left behind. Left behind by what? By the money everyone else was making. Was everyone else actually making money, or was that a story? It was a story. The truth was one stock was moving, and I was interpreting that movement as evidence I was failing at life. 5 minutes of sitting with that feeling, the urgency dissolved. The stock topped out 7 minutes later and reversed. I'd saved myself from buying the high by simply being willing to feel my feelings instead of trading them away. By month 3, something shifted. My demo account wasn't just profitable, it was boring. I was taking 2, maybe 3 trades a day, waiting for exact setups, honoring every stop, taking profits at targets even when the stock kept running. My win rate was 58%, but my average winner was twice my average loser, so the math worked. No drama, no excitement. No stories about the one that got away or the one that should have worked. Just execution and acceptance. For the first time in my trading career, I felt calm. Not confident in that aggressive way that precedes disaster. Calm in the way someone feels when they're doing what they know how to do and accepting whatever result comes. Sarah noticed the change before I did. One evening she said, "You seem different. Lighter." I told her about the demo trading, the therapy, the urge pause practice. She listened and then said something I'll never forget. "So you stopped trying to prove you're not your dad?" I hadn't told her that's what therapy was uncovering, but she'd been watching me long enough to see the pattern. Every trade where I'd risked too much, every time I'd insisted on being right, when the market said otherwise, I was fighting a ghost. My father, who'd worked himself to exhaustion and still couldn't get ahead, who'd taught me that poor people stay poor, and the only way out was making big moves. I'd been trying to make big moves for 3 years, and all I'd proven was that big moves made by small-minded people lead to big losses. The decision to go back to live trading with real money wasn't dramatic. There was no lightning bolt moment or breakthrough revelation. I just woke up one Saturday knowing I was ready. Not ready to make money, ready to execute regardless of the outcome. Ready to follow my rules even when doing so felt wrong. Ready to take losses without it meaning anything about my worth as a human being. I transferred $5,000 into my account, the same amount I'd started with years ago. But this time, I wrote something on a notacard and taped it to my monitor. The market doesn't care about your childhood. Trade accordingly. My first live trade in 6 months was a perfect example of everything I'd learned. The setup appeared. All 5 of my criteria aligned: price structure, volume, time of day, risk, reward ratio, market context. But the moment I clicked buy with real money, my body responded differently than in demo. My heart rate increased. My breathing got shallow. The old voice started whispering, "This one's going to work, you're back, you've figured it out." I recognized that voice immediately. It was expectation trying to hijack execution. So I did the urge pause. Pushed back from my desk. Took 60 seconds to feel the excitement without acting on it. When I returned to the screen, my stop was still where I'd placed it. My target was still where it needed to be, and my job was just to wait. The trade hit my target 4 hours later. $300 win. I felt nothing. And that nothing felt perfect. The first month back trading live, I made $700. My second month, I made $400. My third month, I lost $200. By traditional metrics, this wasn't impressive. I'd seen traders online posting screenshots of 5-figure days. But for me, those 3 months represented something more valuable than any individual win. They represented consistency. I was following my process. Taking my setups and only my setups. Honoring every stop without negotiation. Reviewing every trade without judgment. My account was growing slowly, but more importantly, my capacity to execute was becoming unshakable. I was building something that could compound over years, not months. The real test came in month 4, when I had my first 3-loss day in a row. All 3 trades met my criteria. All 3 hit stops. Nothing to do differently, just variance. The old me would have spiraled, questioned everything, looked for what I was missing. Maybe revenge traded to fix the hole in my account. The new me did something different. I logged all 3 trades, noted they were good decisions that didn't work, and closed my laptop. That evening, Dr. Martinez asked how I felt about the losses. I told her they were disappointing but not devastating. She smiled and said, "Then you've already won. Not the trades. You've won the battle with yourself." She was right. The market had taken some money, but it hadn't taken my peace. That was the transformation I'd been seeking for 3 years. My 6th month back trading, I had my first 5-figure month, 12,000 in profit. For about 6 hours, I felt euphoric. Then I felt terrified. Because my nervous system remembered this feeling. This is when I usually self-destruct. This is when I start taking bigger risks, skipping rules, telling myself I've figured it out. So instead of celebrating, I made an emergency appointment with Dr. Martinez. We spent the session talking about success tolerance, the idea that we each have a thermostat for how much success we can handle before we unconsciously sabotage back to our comfort zone. My thermostat, she explained, was probably set somewhere around, struggling but surviving. 12,000 in profit was way above that set point. My subconscious was going to try to bring me back down. We needed to expand my capacity to hold success. The technique she taught me sounds absurd, but worked perfectly. Every morning for 2 weeks, I spent 5 minutes visualizing my account balance as normal. Not something to celebrate or fear, just normal. Like if I'd always been profitable, this is just what my account looks like. No big deal. Just reality. This practice was harder than it sounds because my ego wanted to make the win mean something. Proof I'm good enough. Evidence I've arrived. Justification for past struggles. But making it mean something would set me up to lose it. Instead, I had to make it mean nothing. Just another day of following my process. Just another month of data. The detachment wasn't cold. It was protective. Month 7, I made 8,000. Month 8, 14,000. Month 9, I had a $6,000 losing month. The old me would have panicked at that reversal. The current me recognized it as probability playing out. 9 months of trading, 6 were winners, 3 were losers. My winners averaged larger than my losers. The math was working exactly as designed. That losing month didn't trigger a cascade of doubt or a strategy overhaul. It triggered a detailed review of execution quality, which revealed I'd started taking setups that were close enough to my criteria instead of exact matches. The losing month was feedback, not failure. I tightened my criteria and moved forward. 1 year after returning to live trading, my account was up $62,000. I'd started with $5,000, added nothing except profits, and grown it to $67,000 through nothing but boring, consistent execution. No home runs, no brilliant calls, just the same simple strategy, executed the same simple way, day after day after day. The strategy itself wasn't sophisticated. I was trading basic support and resistance with volume confirmation. The edge wasn't in complexity. It was in my ability to execute without emotional interference. The market rewards people who can do simple things consistently, not complex things occasionally. But more important than the money was who I'd become in the process. I was no longer the man Sarah had watched destroy himself through desperate trading. I was someone who could sit with discomfort without medicating it through risk. Someone who could admit mistakes without it attacking my identity. Someone who could succeed without panicking about losing the success. The transformation wasn't about learning how to trade. It was about learning how to be a person who can trade without being destroyed by the process. The market was my training ground, but the real work happened in therapy, in daily reflection, in the honest conversations with myself about what I was actually doing and why. Sarah and I started rebuilding what trading had damaged. The conversations changed from me defending my losses to sharing what I was learning about myself. She wasn't my audience anymore. She was my partner in understanding why I'd needed to risk everything to feel alive. We talked about my childhood, about how I'd learned that safety was boring and risk was where life happened. She shared her own fears about money and security, how watching me gamble had triggered her own trauma from growing up with an alcoholic father. Trading had nearly destroyed our marriage, not because of the money I'd lost, but because I'd been unavailable, mentally and emotionally hijacked by market obsession. Now, I was present again. The screens were still on, but I wasn't lost inside them. The moment I knew I'd actually transformed came 14 months into my comeback. I was in a trade that was working perfectly. Already up $2,000, approaching my target. Then news broke, unexpected news that sent the stock gapping another 6% beyond where I'd planned to exit. The old me would have held, convinced this was my moment to catch lightning. The current me stuck to my plan. I exited at my predetermined target, watched the stock run another 4%, and felt nothing but satisfaction. Not because I didn't want more money. Because I wanted something more than money. I wanted to be someone who could follow their plan, even when breaking it would have paid. That distinction might sound subtle, but it's everything. It's the difference between trading for profit and trading for identity. My second year of profitable trading taught me something the first year couldn't. Consistency isn't about never struggling. It's about struggling better. I still had days where I wanted to revenge trade after a loss. I still felt FOMO watching stocks move without me. I still dealt with greed trying to convince me to hold past my target. The difference was I now had a relationship with those feelings. I could feel them without becoming them. When greed whispered, "Hold for more," I could acknowledge the feeling, appreciate that it was just my nervous system trying to maximize reward and still execute my exit. The feelings didn't disappear. I just stopped letting them make decisions. By the end of year 2, my account had grown to $138,000. I withdrew $50,000, paid back Sarah's parents who'd helped us when my trading had destroyed our savings, put $20,000 into our daughter's college fund that I'd depleted, kept the rest invested in the market and in my trading account. The withdrawals felt significant not because of the amount, but because I was actually taking money out instead of depositing more in. For the first time, trading was giving to my life instead of taking from it. That shift, from drain to source, represented everything the transformation had been about. But the real success wasn't the dollar figure. It was how I felt sitting down to trade each morning. No anxiety, no desperation, no need to prove anything. Just a person with a skill showing up to execute that skill. Some days the market cooperated and I made money. Some days it didn't and I took small losses. Neither outcome touched my sense of self anymore. This detachment, which some people mistake for not caring, is actually the highest form of caring. I cared enough to prepare properly, to follow my rules, to review my execution. I just didn't care about the outcome determining my worth. That distinction changed everything. I think about that Tuesday morning, when I lost everything, sitting in my car, unable to explain to Sarah why our future had evaporated. That man was so certain he understood trading, so confident in his intelligence and analysis, so convinced the market would eventually recognize his effort. That man was wrong about everything except one thing. He was indeed at the beginning of his trading education. He just thought he was near the end. The education wasn't about markets. It was about himself. Every loss was a lesson in humility. Every win was a test of discipline. Every emotional hijacking was an opportunity to understand why he needed markets to prove something they could never prove. The transformation from broke to profitable wasn't a straight line. It was a spiral, visiting the same lessons at deeper levels, falling down and getting up, learning and forgetting and learning again. But somewhere in that spiral, I stopped being at war with myself. I stopped needing trading to fix what was broken. I got boring. And in that boredom, I found something I'd never accessed through excitement: actual, sustainable edge. The market hasn't changed. Technical analysis is the same. Risk management principles are identical. The only thing that transformed was my ability to execute them without interference from the wounded parts of myself that wanted to be proven valuable. If you're struggling with trading right now, if your account is shrinking and your confidence is dying, I want you to hear this. You're probably not a bad trader learning to be good. You're likely a hurt person using trading to avoid dealing with being hurt. And until you face that truth, no strategy will save you. The market will keep exposing your unhealed wounds until you stop defending them and start healing them. This doesn't mean trading is therapy. But it does mean that if you bring unexamined trauma to an environment that responds to your every fear and hope with immediate feedback, you're going to pay tuition until you learn the real lesson. The lesson isn't about markets. It's about you. My transformation required everything I was avoiding: therapy, honest self-reflection, admitting I was wrong about myself, facing the fears I'd been running from since childhood, building capacity to hold success, learning to feel my feelings without trading them away. None of that sounds like trading education, because it isn't. But it's what made profitable trading possible. The technical knowledge was always there. What was missing was a person capable of executing it without self-sabotage. That person had to be built, and building him required destroying who I'd been pretending to be. Today, trading is just part of my life instead of all of it. I trade a few hours each morning, then close my platform and move on. The profits matter. They're funding our daughter's education, building our retirement, creating financial security we never had. But they matter less than what I had to become to earn them. I had to become someone who could sit still, who could wait, who could be wrong without dying, who could be right without getting dangerous. Someone who respected rules more than impulses. Someone who valued consistency over excitement. That person isn't more talented than who I was 3 years ago. He's just more honest. And in markets, honesty pays better than brilliance. The broke version of me thought markets were the enemy, some force that was against him, some conspiracy designed to take his money. The profitable version knows markets are mirrors. They don't care about you. They just reflect who you are under pressure. If you're disciplined, they'll reward discipline. If you're chaotic, they'll amplify chaos. If you're running from your past, they'll keep triggering exactly what you're avoiding until you stop running. This isn't mystical. It's mechanical. Your psychology creates your actions. Your actions create your results. Change the psychology, change the results. But you can't fake the psychology change. The market is too honest. It will call your bluff every single time. So this is my full trading transformation, from someone using markets to prove his worth to someone executing a process regardless of outcome. From someone whose identity lived and died with each trade to someone whose identity exists independent of any result. From someone terrified of being ordinary to someone who found extraordinary peace in being boringly consistent. The transformation wasn't about making money. Making money was just evidence the transformation was real. What actually changed was my relationship with myself. And once that changed, trading became simple. Not easy simple. Clear. Executable. If I could go back and tell that broke version of me one thing, it wouldn't be about trading strategy or risk management or technical analysis. It would be this: the market isn't trying to take anything from you. It's trying to teach you who you are. Stop fighting the lesson. Stop defending your ego. Stop pretending you're further along than you are. Just face the truth about why you're really trading, what you're really seeking, what you're really running from. That honesty, that brutal, uncomfortable, ego-destroying honesty, is the only edge that actually compounds forever. Everything else is just noise.